Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into some really interesting material.
Yeah, we've got excerpts from a recent interview with Elon Musk. This one was at the Qatar Economic Forum.
Right. And it covers a lot of ground. So our plan for this deep dive is to go through these excerpts, try to get past the usual headlines.
Exactly. Let's unpack what they actually tell us about how he's juggling everything, running companies, advising the government, his views on Tesla, SpaceX.
AI, political stuff too, all the hot topics. We want to really dig into the core insights, maybe find some details that weren't widely reported.
Sounds good. It's definitely a complex picture. Where should we start?
Well, the interview itself kind of kicks off by highlighting this blended world he's in now. CEO of multiple companies and working with the government.
Yeah, it's quite a setup. Not your typical CEO role. The source notes he's traveling constantly.
Yeah.
Silicon Valley, LA, Austin, DC.
He mentions things like dinner with the president, cabinet meetings.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty involved.
And he gives a time figure, right? About 1 to 2 days a week, still dedicated to the government advisory work.
Which, when you think about Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, that's a serious commitment.
Definitely. We can circle back to exactly what that government role entails later, but maybe let's tackle Tesla first. The interviewer brings that up early on.
Yeah, they jump right in, saying Tesla has, quote, suffered in recent months and faced blowback. They specifically mention falling sales in Europe.
And Musk's response is pretty immediate, isn't it? He says this situation has already turned around.
Right. Claims global sales are strong, no big shortfall expected.
And his evidence. He points straight to the stock market cap. Back over $1 trillion, near all-time highs.
So, from his perspective, the market signal is strong. The company's fundamentally okay.
Although he does acknowledge the European sales point admits they are down year over year.
But he frames that differently, right? Says it's true for all car manufacturers in Europe. A market thing, not a Tesla thing.
Exactly. Which, might be partly true, but it's his counter.
And then there's that anecdote the interviewer brings up. People driving Teslas with stickers saying, I bought this before we knew Elon was crazy.
Yeah. That's pretty direct. How does he respond to that?
Well, his take, as presented in the source, is basically, okay, maybe he lost some customers on the left because of his politics, but gained others on the right.
So a shift in the customer base, but overall demand is still solid, is his argument. Cites the sales numbers again.
And despite all that noise, he seems pretty dug in on Tesla. He says he's committed for 5 years as CEO, unless, something fatal happens.
That's a clear statement,
Right.
Which leads into the whole pay package discussion, the $56 billion one, or maybe $100 billion now with options.
Yeah, the numbers are staggering. But he pushes back, says it's not about the cash.
Right. He frames it in the interview as needing sufficient voting control.
Why? To stop activist investors kicking him out, especially with future plans like humanoid robots. Doesn't want politics to derail that.
And he does not hold back about the judge who voided that package in Delaware.
No kidding. Calls her the activist who is cosplaying a judge in a Halloween costume. Pretty strong language.
Very strong. Clearly feels that ruling wasn't, let's say, legitimate.
He also touches on the personal side of the blowback. Says he regretted some political stuff, took it personally, and it wasn't just stickers, apparently.
He claims there was massive violence. Threats.
Yeah, mentions attacks on showrooms, cars being burned, death threats against him and his family.
Wow, that's serious.
He makes a clear distinction, though. Says that kind of violence and threats are unacceptable, and those responsible will face consequences, maybe even prison. But nonviolent political disagreement, people turning against Tesla for those reasons, that's different.
Okay, so drawing a line there, let's shift gears then. What about SpaceX?
Big focus there, as presented, is rockets, satellites, and Starlink terminals. He specifically says they are not getting into the weapons business despite being asked.
Interesting boundary to draw. And he makes a huge claim about their launch dominance, right?
Yeah, predicts SpaceX will handle 90% of all mass launched to orbit globally this year.
90%. That's almost a monopoly on getting stuff to space.
And the driver for that, he says, is building out Starlink.
The satellite constellation, which he describes as the biggest ever, heading towards, 80% of all active satellites?
Something like that. Just an incredible number. And the purpose he emphasizes for Starlink, it's not just internet, is it?
No, he frames it as a tool for global development. Low-cost, high-bandwidth internet everywhere to help lift people out of poverty.
By enabling learning online, participating in the global economy, selling goods from anywhere.
Yeah, a fundamental shift in opportunity is how he puts it. He even mentions the interview connection itself is running over Starlink, kind of a live demo.
Does the topic of a Starlink IPO come up, taking it public?
It does, but he says there's no rush. Seems hesitant.
Why? What are the concerns mentioned?
Well, the usual overhead of being public, but he really focuses on lawsuits, specifically U.S. shareholder derivative lawsuits.
Ah, what's his issue with those?
He basically calls them a racket. Says plaintiffs' firms find puppet plaintiffs to initiate suits, even if most shareholders are against it. Calls it an absurd situation needing reform.
And he mentions that Texas law as a potential fix.
Yeah, the one requiring 3% shareholder agreement for certain suits. He sees that as a positive step, at least at the state level.
Okay. Now, AI threads through a lot of his work. The interview touches on the OpenAI lawsuit.
It does. And he gives his side very clearly. Co-founded it as nonprofit, open source, put in the first chunk of money, maybe $50 million.
And the lawsuit's core claim, from his view.
Betrayal. That they switched to closed source, for-profit, basically abandoning the mission for money.
He uses that rainforest analogy, right?
Yeah, like funding a conservation group that turns into a logging company. It's a powerful image. He also dismisses media reports about structural changes at OpenAI, calls them untrue or just partial walkbacks.
What about AI regulation in general? His view seems pretty consistent over time.
It does. He still thinks there should be regulation for public safety.
The referee analogy again.
Exactly. Need a few referees, but not an army of referees that stifles everything.
And he sees a difference between fields.
Yeah. Argues new stuff like AI is underregulated, basically no specific regulator, while older industries, cars, planes, food, drugs, are overregulated.
And he uses that SpaceX lawsuit as an example of overregulation causing problems.
Right, the ITAR asylum seeker one says they got sued for not hiring asylum seekers because ITAR rules barred them from sensitive roles. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, is his point.
Okay, let's swing back to the government work. The Doge team, he calls it.
Yeah, Doge. Project on Government Efficiency. He describes it as purely advisory.
So what do?
Review government bodies for relevance, check contracts for value for money, then make recommendations.
But the power lies elsewhere. Secretaries decide whether to act.
That's how he presents it.
Yeah.
And he stresses the transparency, says everything's posted on doge.gov and on X.
What about the conflict of interest question?
Right.
Running companies while advising the government.
He tackles that head on. Argues, since he's only advisory, no formal power, any funny business trying to steer contracts his way would be huge public news instantly.
And since there hasn't been such news?
He implies no conflict exists. That's his reasoning presented in the source.
Okay. Now, the interview apparently gets a bit tense around an international issue, South Africa and Starlink.
Yeah, this part sounds pretty heated, based on a Bloomberg report suggesting the SA government might bend rules for Starlink around black ownership requirements.
And Musk's reaction.
Very strong. He calls the South African laws giving preference to black South Africans racist, claims there are 140 such laws, and he can't get a license there despite being born there because he's not black.
Wow. And the interviewer presses on the conflict of interest angle, given his U.S. government role.
Right. And Musk apparently pushes back hard, repeatedly asking the interviewer why they support racist laws, rather than directly answering the conflict question in that exchange. It sounds like a really difficult moment in the interview.
Definitely sounds charged. Okay, what about the Doge savings target? There was that big pre-election number, $2 trillion.
Right. The interviewer contrasts that with what's currently shown on doge.gov, which is over $170 billion identified. Still a lot, but not $2 trillion.
How does Musk explain the gap?
Says the $2 trillion was never an immediate goal, and progress depends on Congress and the White House actually implementing their advisory recommendations. He can't force them.
So he frames the $170 billion plus as incredible progress for just an advisory group.
Pretty much. And he kind of jabs at the interviewer for focusing on the target, calling it being trapped in an NPC dialogue tree of a traditional journalist.
Ouch. Another flashpoint seems to be U.S. aid funding. Bill Gates raised concerns about cuts.
Yeah, Gates apparently warned cuts could cost millions of lives. Musk's response, according to the source, is pretty dismissive.
How so?
Calls Gates's claim false, questions his credibility by bringing up Jeffrey Epstein, and alleges massive fraud and graft in U.S. aid itself, saying little money gets where it's supposed to go.
Strong accusations. Did the interviewer push back with specifics?
Yes, brought up PEPFAR, the ASAGIDS program, cited its reported success, and mentioned reports from UNAIDS about aid freezes disrupting services.
And Musk's response to that specific example?
Initially, he denies the program isn't running fully, but when pressed on specific reports about, say, prevention or drug rollouts being unfunded,
He changes tack.
yeah, according to the source, he then says, okay, if those specific things aren't funded, he'll fix it right now, which is quite a shift from the initial denial, shows the discrepancy in the back and forth there.
Interesting. Okay, moving towards the end, what about his future political plans? Spending.
Says he plans to spend a lot less on U.S. elections, feels he's done enough, doesn't see a big reason for major spending right now.
And any clarification on his relationship with Putin? There were reports.
He denies speaking to him recently, says it was one video call 5 years ago, and then takes a shot at the Wall Street Journal, calls it the worst newspaper.
Okay, so wrapping up, how does he view the current period and the challenges?
The interviewer notes he's managing multiple huge ventures amid constant crises. Musk seems to agree, says every year feels pivotal.
And he points to specific things making this a particularly big year.
Definitely. Lists quite a few things across his companies.
I'll go ahead.
At SpaceX, aiming for a fully reusable Starship key for his multiplanetary ambitions. At Neuralink, getting patients controlling computers with thought and maybe even restoring sight with an implant later this year or early next.
No. Ambitious timelines.
And then AI, he talks about being near AGI or a digital superintelligence explosion. And at Tesla, launching unsupervised autonomy next month in Austin. Cars driving with no one inside.
Huge technological pushes across the board.
Yeah. And he ends up by summing himself up, despite all the business and politics, as a technologist first and foremost.
Okay, we've covered a ton there. From Tesla's roller coaster to Starlink's global plans, the AI debate, his government advisory work, the controversies, It's a lot to take in.
It really highlights the sheer scale and, frankly, the audacity of what he's trying to do across so many different complex fields all at once.
Absolutely. So let's leave our listeners with something to chew on based on everything we've just discussed from these interview excerpts. You've got these massive goals, saving trillions, reusable rockets, AGI, connecting the globe. What do you think is the biggest single obstacle standing in the way? Is it the raw technical difficulty of making these things work? Is it the regulatory hurdles he bumps up against so often? Or is it maybe the challenge of just managing public opinion and political headwinds in such a polarized environment? Which hurdle looms largest?